Welcome back, and my guest is the chairperson of the Joint Constitutional Review Committee. Let's use the right term. He's the co-chairperson, Honourable Member of Parliament, Vincent Smith. And it appears to me that if you want somebody to chair a committee for you, Vincent Smith is the man to go to. It looks like it.
No, I believe there are many, many more better chairpersons than Vincent Smith in Parliament. I do believe that there are very competent people who can chair in Parliament.
Well, you are amongst those, at least from the point of view of those who followed your work. But how many hearings, public hearings into land reform did you chair?
We had 34 all in all, and
Yeah.
we had split them into two, the inland and the coastal. And the ones that I presided over were about 16.
16.
Yeah.
And your experience there?
My experience there was one term where it became very clear to me that this matter is very serious, that South Africans from both sides of the spectrum wanted their voices heard. Many people came there and they were very determined that the Constitution must not be amended, and they gave their reasons. And there were many who were just impatient that wanted it to be amended because they felt their dignity must be restored, and land is dignity and culture. So it was a very serious matter. It brought everybody to the debating table. And I can also say that the tolerance levels amongst the divergent views was exemplary.
Okay.
We just underestimated. In every event, we were oversubscribed. We had planned for about 300 people per event. I can tell you that there was no event that had less than 1,000 people.
Really? So people did pitch up?
People did pitch up.
Yeah.
Yes, people did pitch up.
Just explain the whole process. I mean, there was the public hearings themselves where individuals or groups of people came to put their case forward. But there were also written submissions.
Yes.
Is that, how does it work?
We started by inviting South Africans to give us written submissions, and initially it was for 30 days. We then extended it by another 2 weeks, so they had about 45 days where people could write into Parliament and say, we want the Constitution, Section 25 amended, and these are our reasons. Or we don't want it amended, and these are our reasons. And that's how Parliament works generally. But we understand that most of the people who are affected by land in terms of not having land, don't have access to internet, don't have the ability to write in. So we felt, allow those who want to write in, but let us also go to the farm laborer, let us go to the unemployed youth, and afford them an opportunity also to talk to Parliament. So we had a dual consultation process. One you wrote in, and one we went to the people. And I think it was well worth it, because when we get to analyze the reports, you can see the constituency that wrote in, and you can see the constituency that came to the public hearings are two divergent constituencies with divergent expectations. And for me, what is important, it showed just how far apart we are as South Africans. This thing of a rainbow nation was for me diffused there, because unless we deal with the rand, the divisions are never going to be...
Why is that? Because you say at the hearings, the people who appeared, they were exemplary in the way they conducted themselves, notwithstanding the divergent views, right? But the views are very divergent. So just try and pull this together.
Well, you got people that came there and said, look, I am an owner of a farm.
Yeah.
If you are advocating for expropriation, you're taking my farm, which is my job, you're taking my farm, which is my pension. You're taking my farm, which is my home. I can't allow you to do it. On the other hand, you had people that were saying, but we've lived on this farm. Our ancestors are buried here. And yet when a new owner comes, we get kicked out. We don't even know where to bury our people. We are the ones that work the farm. And yet we're told that if farms are given to black people, for instance, that those farms will not be successful. On the other hand, the apartheid spatial plan, our people still live far away from the places of employment.
Yes.
Because of the past plan. People are saying, can we have property close to where we work? Finally, you have people who live in informal settlements that just don't have security of tenure. Why can't we give those people title deeds? And of course, there's the whole issue around the communal land. So there were so many views, there are so many views, and it's going to be an interesting exercise when we get to our recommendations as to exactly how do we deal with these various stakeholders.
Well, but you know, the whole point of land is very, very complex because we relate to it differently because of where people sit. Like the one who believes they bought it, they own it, not believes they bought it and they own it, they will have a view. And other people think that there will be land anyway that's allocated to anybody who wants it. And there's the urban migration issue, there's the farming side of things, informal settlements. So you've got several contentious things to resolve there. Now, did you chair the Pretoria hearings?
I did.
Okay. Well, there's a clip that's doing the rounds of one fellow who said he wants land for rhinos and also to build in Nkandla, his own. Do you remember him?
I do, very, very well.
So what did you think of his submission?
Well, we had to, first of all, take all submissions very seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, there were many submissions, if we were not disciplined, we could have responded to on the spot.
Yes.
But we had said to South Africans that there is no input that is silly or no input that we will not take seriously. So we had to exercise patience, we had to exercise professionalism, and we took note of all those submissions. And of course, we'll go back. I think what he was saying is, if other people can have land to build houses, I also want my land to build houses or to farm. And I think it's in that spirit that we'll take his argument.
Now, but again, at the center of the debate on land expropriation, I think is the compensation part. How was that handled by the people who came before you?
Well, of course, there's that whole argument around, but my property is bonded. If you guys are going to expropriate, you'll take my property, why must I continue to pay the bank? Similarly, banks are very wary, saying, you know, the mortgage market, Tim, is in excess of 500 billion rand. So if we don't deal with this thing in a professional and a sober manner, we'll expose the banking industry in South Africa, because who would then pay, or how do you bank? But also, we have international owners of land, and there are international treaties that we have signed. So you can't just willy-nilly take land, because those people, for instance, are not bound by the South African Constitution. There are international treaties that will probably go to international court. So these things have to be thought out carefully. These things have to be done in a manner that we cater for all these expectations and all these anxieties. And I do think that at the end of the day, all South Africans accept that there must be land reform. So there has to be expropriation without compensation. The question is, how do you do it? Who does it? And for what purpose do we do it? And we'll have to come up with a formula for that.
Which means, you've seen the tweet and you've seen the news, you've heard the American President Trump already saying that the South African government is expropriating land from white people specifically. And you are still to compile your report. So it means you must move with speed on this matter. And I'd like to hear your comments on what Donald Trump, the American president, had to say.
I think that's best left to the Cabinet and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. But I mean, from where I'm sitting, I think it was an ill-informed statement. I don't think Mr. Trump could rely on a news clipping to come up with that proposal. And I think most South Africans know. You live in South Africa, I live in South Africa. There is no land grabs happening. There is no white genocide. And I think that message must be sent to Mr. Trump as soon as possible by the relevant powers in our country.
But from the work that you've done, just for the benefit of our viewers, when are you completing your work? We
are now at the stage, Tim, where we're going to process the written submissions. We gave a interim report last week of about 149,000 that has already been processed. There's probably 300,000. We will do that in the next 2 or 3 weeks. The written submissions, we had asked people who put in written submissions to indicate if they want to come and supplement it oral representation. That's going to happen in a week's time. So we will identify about 30 people to come and supplement their written submissions. And by the 10th of September, we will go into committee. And as political parties, then process all the information that we have. And I'm hoping that by the 20th of September, we will be ready to present a recommendation to Parliament. Okay, so
say, by the end of September, thereabouts, we'll have a sense of what the thinking is around land in the country. Let's go back to the work of the Member of Parliament, the MP. Now, I'm one of those people who feel that MPs are more answerable to the political party bosses than to the broader public. And I'm of the view that somewhere we should have some constituency representation so that you can know who specifically your MP is. If you feel strongly about certain things, then you can hold the MP to account. What's your view of that?
That argument has been put, Tim, and it happens at local government level. If it's going to strengthen accountability, and if it's going to strengthen oversight over the executive, it must be welcomed. But I do know there was recommendations of changing the electoral system many, many years ago, and I think at an appropriate time that exercise will be revisited. But for me, anything that makes it a more effective oversight, a more effective lawmaking environment, it must be welcomed.
Yeah, because, as I said, because over time there were certain things the South African public were very unhappy with that were going on, including what has now culminated in the Zondo Commission. To my mind, they would have told MPs a long time ago that there's something that's going on that's not right here. We want you to take action on it. And the MPs were going here, going there, including calling swimming pools fire pools. We say, oh, really now? I mean, these are people we hold in high regard. Look at Vincent, such a gentleman, decent person, and now he's got to find a way of calling a swimming pool a fire pool. Does that come with the pressures of the job?
It does.
Yeah.
I think initially it came with the pressures of the job. I think things have turned the corner. I think now MPs understand their role and they take it more seriously. The environment has changed from that environment, certainly in Parliament. And I think we're on the road to what Parliament really needs to be. And I'm confident that in time Parliament will do what the Constitution expects MPs to do, and this will be a better country.
So, as I said, when you conducted the portfolio hearings, and of course now chairing, that was in the public domain. How do you get people to work with you, to cooperate with you, your colleagues? Because in the open session of Parliament, the way MPs snipe at each other, it makes one wonder what happens when it's tea break or lunchtime between these members of Parliament. You call each other honorable member, but the way you attack each other and the comments you make about one another in political parties sometimes does not come across as honorable at all.
No, I agree with you,
Yeah.
that sometimes our behavior is regrettable in the House. In terms of the committee term, I don't know that there is any blueprint. I always try to give every member of Parliament in my portfolio committees the respect they deserve and allow them to express themselves. And so far it has worked. I've not had any MP feeling that he's been marginalized because he doesn't belong to the ANC, or he's being marginalized or she's being marginalized for their views. And in all the committees that I've served in, we've worked as a team. And I don't know why, but it has worked for us.
As we conclude our conversation, can you give me a sense of the direction that you think the land report is going to take, at least on the basis of the submissions that you have seen or heard?
Well, I don't want to preempt what is coming out, but I do think that the Constitution needs to be strengthened to make it absolutely clear that expropriation without compensation is allowed. Now, I know there are those that argue that it's implicit in Section 25. It might be for the learned, but for the people in the rural areas, the farm workers, it is not so implicit. So I think we need to strengthen it. It doesn't have to be major, but people must be clear that expropriation without compensation is a vehicle that is, or a tool that is allowable.
Sure.
I also do think, Tim, at this point, I'm not preempting what is going on, but I do think we're going to have to make sure that those that have the power to expropriate don't abuse the ability, because it's serious power to give people to expropriate land. And we might have to find, very much like we have a public protector or the Auditor General, a Chapter 9 kind of institution where you and I can go to if we feel that we're abused, almost something like a land protector. And put that into the Constitution to say, set up, parallel to the expropriation powers that you're giving the state, some regulator that makes sure that the state doesn't abuse his or her power.
A brief comment from you. State ownership or private ownership?
No doubt private ownership. Because land must be a vehicle for economic development. It must be a tool for getting capital. And you can't get capital if it is owned by the state. I think that people want to own land so that they can use it to empower themselves. Those are my views, but the committee will deliberate. But if you're asking me, and the ANC anyway has never argued for one model. There is communal land that will be dealt with in a certain fashion. There is land where people must be given title deeds, and there's land where perhaps the state must own the land. But I'm saying it's a mixed sort of model. It can't be a one-size-fits-all. That's why I'm saying state ownership for all land I don't think will work.
Vincent Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And that's Mr. Vincent Smith that we know for chairing the ad hoc committee. We've referred to that. And of course, recently has been around the country chairing the land reform hearings. And after the break, we'll take a look at the arts industry and the alleged mistreatment of actors and actresses by production houses and broadcasters.